They finally arrived. The Godox MF-12 macro flashes are right here. I have not been this excited since 1923 when Ansel Adams invented the nude. Well, I think it was Ansel Adams. Anyway, today we are going to celebrate the release of the Godox MF-12 macro flash. They were released a little while ago. They've been available to purchase for a few weeks. My Godox flashes got sent somewhere else, Iceland or Australia, but I finally did get them. And I've been using them ever since, indoors, outdoors, in the toilet. That's an in-joke. You have to know that that's my studio too. But anyhow, I've been using them non-stop, and I have formed some pretty strong opinions about them, as you are going to hear. First of all, and foremost of all, my Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for supporting me and my work and what we do on the channel. Without you, I couldn't be doing this. So thank you to everybody who supports me through Patreon or through any other way. And there are a lot of people out there who support me, and I'm so grateful to you. The next people I want to thank are you again. You people who contributed to my Godox MF-12 kitty a few months ago. It was because of you that I was able to order the extra flash units. I still have 2 that haven't arrived. To get to the full complement of 6. But thank you again for your generosity in helping me get these flashes. I promise you I will make this review worth it. Many thanks also to Pergear. Pergear made it possible for me to get these flashes before they were released, and that was very kind of them. And I am doing this review on their behalf. So Pergear is a camera accessory company. They carry a lot of brands that are more affordable than a lot of the name brands that you normally think of. Aperture, Godox is a good example, Saramonic, the microphones, Deity. These are all top shelf brands. Pergear is a company you need to check out. So I'm going to put a link to their stores in my show notes. And I think you'll find the prices hard to beat. I also want to say thank you to Small Rig. They asked me to take a look at one of their microphones. It's this one. It's the Forever L20. It's a lavalier microphone that has a built-in low-cut filter. It also has a decibel boosting button that you can press if you want to be super loud for some reason. I just shout when I want to be loud. If you're in the market for a lavalier microphone, this may well be one you want to look at. The flashes. These things are awesome. They are really not just miniature flashes. The first thing you think of when you see one of these is, oh, how cute, small camera flashes, which is pretty much what the TT350 is. That's a small camera flash, a 2-cell flash that you can use on camera like any other flash, or you can sit it on a stand and use it off camera. These flashes are part of an off-camera system. They are made for macro photography, and they are tiny. They weigh 5.1 grams. No, that's impossible. They weigh 5.1 ounces. Do you know what else weighs 5.1 ounces? Nothing. These are the lightest things in the universe. They're not. In order to use one of these flashes, you need to have a way to trigger it. And they can be triggered by any of Godox's triggers. The X1 will trigger them. The X Pro will trigger them. This is the one you really want, though. When you buy the MF-12, you're not buying a standalone flash. You see, you can't put it on your camera. It doesn't have a camera attacher. It does, actually. I'll show it to you in a minute, but bear with me for a second on this. They're made to be used off camera, either on your lens as a ring light of sorts. So they're made to be used in groups. The simplest group would be a group of 2, and you can have them mounted on the front of your macro lens, or on the front of your regular lens if you want, or they can be mounted independently to use in a macro setup in the studio. Now, I obviously have a preference for using them in the studio because that's what I bought them for, but I have also been using them outdoors and loving them. Now, what I did was I went out last weekend and I took the flashes with me, and I was doing some photography, and I ran into a couple of fun things. Anyway, where was I? I was the flash. Found another one of my favorite insects. Well, it turns out, according to my brother Allan anyway, the first recorded sighting of an ambush bug was by a man named Waldo. I've come down here a lot. In fact, one of my best friends is a plover bird that lives down here. I was shooting footage for this, but I've decided instead to make a separate video of it because it was a lot of fun and I thought you might prefer it as a separate video. So that will be coming out in a day or so. So today, most of what I'm going to focus on is what happens in the studio, how these are used, their strengths, a couple of weaknesses as well. But at the end of this brief video, it won't be a brief video, but at the end of this video, you'll know not whether or not you need to buy these, but how many you need to buy and how quickly you need to buy them. We'll figure that out during this video. Well, let's do something I never do. Let's do an unboxing. So I told you this was going to be a non-traditional unboxing. That's the box, and I've taken them out of the box. That was easy. Now, they come with a lot of things, and I am going to show you everything that comes in the box. While I'm doing that, they have two modes. They have manual mode, which I insist that you use, and they have a TTL mode that I forbid you to use. That's all we're going to say about TTL. TTL and macro just don't work together. They'll cause you more problems than they'll help. 99% of the time, I'm not using it with a lens anyway, so you can't meter through the lens until they invent TTO metering through the objective. Anyhow, just use it in manual. That's what it's really made for, and that's how it works best. Now, I have two boxes, because this is the two-piece kit that Pergear sent me. These are two of the four that you bought me. The other two are still in the middle of the ocean with my MacBook Pro, which I bought me with your help. Yeah, my MacBook Pro is not going to get here until Christmas or after. So if you buy them singly, you get one of these ballistic bulletproof cases. It's not. Don't shoot it to see. It's not. It's just fabric. I don't know why they call it ballistic. And it has a flash and the same accessories I'm going to show you. In fact, these individual kits have everything in them except the ring that goes on the camera. And you can actually buy that as an accessory. So let's just look in the big box. So in the big box, what you get is a pair of MF-12 flashes. Amazingly, this particular box of goodies has them pre-labeled in exactly the same color and labeling style I use, as if they had already been opened and used. But we know that wouldn't happen. So you have two of these. You have two of these. These are filter holders to hold the filters. And you have two sets of filters. In fact, let me correct myself. You have four sets of filters in this box because you have one set for each flash. And then there are two different kinds of sets. I've already muddled mine all up. They're a complete mess because I don't use them. I just wanted to look at them. So I put them all back wrong. If I ever decide to use them, I'll have to sort them out. But they come in two varieties. There's every other one of them is a white variety that doesn't let much light through and it has no color. And they have lots and lots of those. That's a joke. I know that these are separators to keep the other ones apart, but you'll notice mine have become separated. So you got one set of these that you would use if you were trying to make color temperature corrections, like if your camera and your computer were from the 1940s or something, and you wanted to add an orange filter to warm your photograph, you could do that with one of these packets. With the other one, it would also have an orange filter in it, but you couldn't use it for that. You just have to use it for adding orange to your photograph. It's all very complicated. All you need to know is grab one of these, stick it in one of these, and snap it on the front of your flash, and it'll change the color of it. Brilliant. It comes with two of these, and you're thinking, well, that's no good, is it? That's not going to fit. And it doesn't, unless you use one of these. And this might be my favorite invention other than the flash itself. These cold shoe adapters are a work of genius, and they go along with this clip that they've invented that attaches to everything. So all you have to do is that, and they are so easy to put on. And then this whole thing, as I say, even when it's full of electrons, as many electrons as you can put in it, weighs 5 ounces, which is nothing. And then this part is just a cold shoe, so it could go on your camera, but it wouldn't be connected to your camera. But it could be. You could put it on a camera, you can put it on a stand, you can put it on the regular flash doodad, like so. So, brilliant. These things are great, but when you're using these in a macro cage, these things just make it so easy. And I brought everything out here, and I'm going to set up a cage type situation for you to show you what that means in just a few minutes. Let me first run quickly through the rest of the contents. It comes with a snack that it says you're not supposed to eat it, but they're delicious. I enjoyed all the other ones that were in there. I'll have that one later. But it comes with this ring. Now, this is solid, well-made plastic. It's not the cheap kind of plastic that, the kind that bends. This is solid as a rock, and it comes with an infinity number of adapters for whatever macro lens you have, all the way from 49 millimeters up to 77. And that covers every macro lens I've ever heard of. It even has one that fits my macro lens, the Tamron, and also my Nikon macro lens. They go on. I've already put the filter, the adapter in this one, the 62 millimeter one, and it clips in, not in any kind of shaky way. In fact, I'm not sure you can get it back out of here. Oh yeah, you can. They're not easy to put in because they have to be forced into that thing there. But once they're in, they're not going anywhere. They don't turn, and they're held firmly. Then they just thread onto your lens like so. And they just snap on like that. And once they do, all you have to do is press the little buttons, and you can position it anywhere you want around the flash. And I had all 4 of mine on when I was out in the field. There was only one thing I didn't like about them, and that was when I had my camera in the field and I had one of the flashes down here, which was kind of like a bottom light, which I love to be able to add that when I'm out in the field. And you'll see for some of the pictures that I took out there, I couldn't have done it without this light. But the problem is, if you have a strap on your camera and you let the camera down onto your thigh, as it goes down, it tends to redirect that light. Now, it's a tiny, minor problem to have. It doesn't move the light around the circle, but it does change the angle of it. And that's a bit irritating, but it's a tiny, tiny problem compared to, yeah, it's a tiny problem. Don't worry about it. They come off just as easily as they go on. If you try to put it on where the bendy bit is not, they won't go on and you'll go mad. But if you put them on in the right place, they go on and they, oh dear, I unscrewed the whole thing. And they come off just by pulling them off. That's all there is to it. Now, as far as the function and using them in the field, I'm going to leave that to my better half, the guy that did the outdoor video, and he'll explain how all this works. But yeah, needless to say, on camera, they're great. They are the flash that you have been wishing somebody would invent that you could afford forever. They're like a ring light that isn't like a ring light. That made no sense whatsoever. They're like a ring light in that the idea is the same. The light's coming from the end of your lens, but you can direct it exactly the way you want it. You have almost infinite control over the power of the different lights. You can even change the color of the lights. You could, for example, put an orangey filter on your top lights up here, and then a blue filter down below, and actually create a weird kind of sunset type macro aesthetic. Don't do that. That sounds terrible, really. But you could if you wanted to. So that's how you use these things out in nature. Now let's talk about how you really use them, which is in the macro studio, because this is where they come into their own. Believe me. There's one thing about these flashes that scared me and made me think, this is not going to work for me. And that was, you soon find out when you open the things up, they don't take batteries. They don't take a battery pack. That 5.1 ounces of flash is the battery in the flash. It has an internal battery that can be charged only through the USB. And when the USB is charging, you can't use it as a flash. And with no way to power it externally, I was going to be stuck with what the batteries could give me. Now, they're rated for 500 full power flashes. And I had no idea when I started out how it would translate to everyday use. The guide number is about 16. So these are not powerful flashes. But even with that low of a guide number, we use them in close proximity to our subjects, either on the camera or in the studio. And I couldn't imagine myself needing them at 1-to-1 power, but possibly at half power or quarter power. I didn't know. So I had to set about figuring out exactly what this 500 full power flash is translated to in terms of real usefulness in the studio. What I did was, after getting them fully charged, and they only took about half an hour to charge all 4 of them to full power the first time. They now take 45 minutes if I drain them. So I charged them all up. I set up a test shot, and I'll show you the shot. It turned into more than one test shot. And I set up the flashes and started shooting. And I kept shooting for the rest of that afternoon. I had one at 1/8 power, one at 1/16, and the other 2 at 1/32. I rotated the order of them because I did label them so I knew which was which, and I wanted to know when they ran out of juice. So I wanted a name for each of them. Even though I used these things constantly for that entire day, they never dropped a single shot. Not one frame from one flash was dropped. 1,472 images in total. That's the number of frames that I shot before there was a dropped frame. And I kept going. And the first one to go was the one that had been on the higher power, been on 1/8 for most of the time. The second one to go was the one at 1/16th. And the ones at 1/32nd, I got bored doing it. They were still going at lunchtime the next day, but I didn't have anything to photograph. I would say one other thing about the non-replaceable batteries. I have a bunch of non-replaceable battery stuff. One thing I have is it's a little gadget that you put on your hat. And when you go to play golf, and there's an irritating woman who talks in your ear about how far you have to go to get to the green. Like that is going to make a difference in how I play golf. But that thing has unreplaceable batteries until it ran out of battery after several years of me swearing at it. And I just looked it up online, found what it took, undid it, replaced the battery, and she's still going strong. I tend to leave her in the bag now, though. She's no fun. She spoils the sport. There's one other thing about these that bothers me. I don't really like it, but I guess on balance, I just have to live with it. And that's this joint. The joint that connects the clip, whether you have the cold shoe adapter or not, this piece. I don't like the fact that on some of them it's stiffer than on others, and anything that works by making a cracking noise like that worries me a bit. It strikes me as something that, unless it's made of kryptonite, it's going to wear out. If you keep doing this, well, I should probably stop, shouldn't I? I'm sure it's got a spring in it that spring loads it so it sounds worse than it is. But this just seems like something that is going to get loose over time. I have no knowledge that is going to happen. And it may be that tightening these screws on the bottom somehow strengthen it up. I don't know. I haven't had any go loose, but it's just it seems to me to be a weak spot. There was another thing that came in the packet that I forgot because I moved them out of there because I don't use them, and that's their diffusers. Now, these are terrible. They're terrible not because they're poorly made. They're not poorly made. They're very solid, nice, uniform white plastic, and they would be good diffusion material, but they're not diffusers. You can't put something that close to the front of a xenon flash tube and expect it to diffuse. This is too close to the flash to be a diffuser. This is going to look to your bug like a spotlight source, a very tight spot of light coming from the xenon tube in there. Diffusion doesn't happen that close to the flash. I'll talk about it more when I show you my setup and how I got the most out of these. But I had to make my own diffusers that actually work to diffuse the light. If you use these, like I did when I was outdoors, because I forgot, this is one of my diffusers. Let's grab another flash and show you roughly how it works. It's pretty self-explanatory. It goes on over the clamp like so, and then it velcros to the bottom in such a way that it separates the flash from the diffusion layer. These work better. What really works is having one of these and then another layer a little further into your rig, but we'll talk about that in a minute. These are not very useful as all these actually do is decrease the intensity of the light, which is not the same as diffusion. They block the light. I'm going to give you a number and you have to guess what it means, but you're only going to have half a second to guess the answer. 1. See, that was it. You missed your opportunity. Okay, so now that we actually start, keep track of your own score. 3. That's the number of things that Godox says on their package that you can photograph with these flashes. You can photograph plants, animals, and insects. They're the only 3 things. So if you were thinking of photographing something else, or if you thought that an insect was an animal, you missed that one. So no points for you. 2, the number of modes that the flashes have. I've already given you this, so if you were listening, you know that there's only one, manual. The other one, TTL, you're not allowed to use. So it's just one. That was a trick question. Number, well, I better not give it a number because then you'll think that's a question. 2.4, correct. The number of gigahertz that they put inside this little hole here. That has 2.4 gigahertz of things in it. 6, wrong. 6 is the number of MF-12s you can fit on one of these rings. 99, that is the number of dollars that you will have to give per gear in order to get one of these with all of the trimmings. For $229, you can get the 2-light kit. 8, that's the number of different camera rings for lens adapters that it comes with. 8. 49 up through 77, and every common one in between. 5, asked and answered, Your Honor. It's the number of groups. 32, the number of channels. 500 full power flashes. 1/34,000th of a second. The flash duration at minimum power. There are 2 other features these flashes have that can be set from the menu. One of them is that they can be used in optical slave mode, but they have a very strange name for optical slave. When you go into the menu, it's called photoc. I don't know what photoc means, but when it's in photoc mode, it will sense another flash and it will fire either S1 or S2, meaning it'll ignore a pre-flash in S2 if you're using red eye reduction mode on your camera, none of which is really very important for what we're doing. But it does have optical mode if you need to use it. Though really, you should not be using these in optical mode because they work with the trigger so flawlessly. I would use them that way, because that way, when they're optically triggered, you have to set the power on the device. When they're triggered from the trigger, you set it from the camera. So that would be my preference. There was something else that they did. They actually allow you to set an ID number, which is something you do with studio flashes so that you can identify the given head that you want to flash. I don't know why you'd need it on one of these, but the circuitry's put in there. You can set how long it's on standby before it turns itself off, and I would recommend you do that, certainly. There's one other feature that this thing has. It's the button that looks like a light. Well, it's because it's a light. It has a modeling light. You probably don't need a modeling light. If you do, that'll be handy, but it doesn't give a good representation of the light like a modeling light in the studio will. It's just an LED after all. No, the best way to do it is to get you a BenQ bendy arm curved light and position that over your setup, and then you'll have all the light you need to set up your... It's not a good modeling light. You need a setup light, not a modeling light. That's what I was trying to say. Shall we look at the rig? Okay, so the ways in which you can use these flashes are almost infinite. Because they're so light, they go anywhere, and you can mount them with anything. I already showed you the very basic mounting. Just by putting the cold shoe on, you can of course mount it on any regular flash stand, just like you normally would. And this will get you by in a pinch for whatever you need to use it for. Put it on the right way though, so it doesn't fall over. And that would be one way to do it. But these are the flash stands that also have the screw, quarter 20 screw in the bottom, so that makes them even more flexible. I told you I didn't like the diffusers, and all credit for this particular model of diffuser goes to a friend of the show, Bud Perot, and it rhymes for a reason. He discovered that if you take the canister that some kind of lemony drink comes in and you cut it out in a very special way like this, that you can mount it directly onto these flashes, and with just a little bit of Velcro to hold it, like so, you've got a really, really nice diffuser. Now, these are much better than the ones that they come with. And you have to drink a lot of lemonade if you build more than one of these. I'm going to build 4 of these, but I don't drink that much lemonade. So if you want some lemonade, let me know. I've got buckets of the stuff. So once you have your diffuser on, whether it's one of Bud's ones or the kind that I came up with, which is similar, and you can make these as big as you want, I recommend that you use 2 layers of diffusion, and that's with almost any flash. But with these little guys, I like this 1 layer, which is well out from the flash, and that will somewhat reduce the specularity. But what you really need is a second diffuser, which is usually either a tent over the subject or a second sheet of tracing paper. But that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about. How are you going to mount these, and where are you going to mount them? Well, I've been using a 4-light setup. It's actually a 5-light setup. On the back of my stand, and I'm using a temporary stand now, but if this was in my macro cage, I'd probably do the same thing. I just have one of those angled Z-mount doodads with a regular flash on it. This is a V860 from Godox also, and this can also be assigned to one of the 5 groups on my trigger. And I just put that behind. Now, in this case, I'm using it with a little bit of blue gel, not the blue gel that goes over the little flashes, because it's a big flash and I needed more blue gel. Just a couple of sheets of blue gel stuck over the end. And this makes actually a very nice, subtle gradient of blue from, it's kind of heavier blue on the bottom and goes up to lighter blue, but I shoot things upside down so I can use it like a sky. With my specimen in the usual position right about here, whether I'm using a lens like this enlarger lens, reversed, using bellows or extension tubes or microscope objectives, it doesn't make any difference. What I want to do is I want to mount lights in this hemisphere, usually in front of the specimen and anywhere in a 360-degree circle around it. Now, in the perfect world, your rig, your cage or whatever will have mounting points that you can put your flashes on. Mine doesn't, because it's just a piece of wood. So what I've been using is the standard small rig bendy arms as one example. And to show you how easy these are to use with these flashes, notice I've got my cold shoe adapter from one of the kits that's on this bendy arm. I just attach the bendy arm to the wooden base, clamp it down with a small rig super clamp, like so. And then all you have to do is feed the flash onto the adapter and it locks. And this can now cover underneath, from the side, from the top, not quite all the way up to the top, but you can see you have an enormous amount of range. And because these things weigh nothing, there's no strain on the clamps. You hardly even have to tighten them, to be honest. I don't even crank them down tight like I do with a regular flash. I just snug them a little bit. So this was obviously the first thing that I thought of. Now, from now on, when I talk about clamping these flashes, I'm going to do it on this so that you can see it rather than have it down below. But it's the same idea. When I clamp it on here, it's the same as clamping it onto your cage any way you do. So a simple bendy arm with a clamp is one way to go. And I just love the way when you're through and you need to charge them, you just slide it off like that and go charge them. All right, small rig again. No, we'll skip small rig. Oh, look, here's another one of the exact same things. That's how often I use them. The new small rig clamps that use the double ball heads, these are superb because, again, they position in any position. But I find this one a bit too short unless I'm either using it in a cage or have usually one of these on the end. So I'll attach a second arm like this, and that'll allow me to get this clamp to position directly over the top, looking straight down. But there are better ways of doing it. Now, probably my favorite way is, by the way, if you don't have a lot of small rig clamps and all you've got is a little lightweight bendy arm from your helping hands device, and you've got a woodworker's 99-cent wood clamp, I discovered you can bolt one of these directly onto this with just a simple nut. So you just clamp it on the wood like that, and then this, it's just an alligator clamp, for crying out loud. You would no more think of putting a flash on an alligator clamp, but it holds perfectly well. Okay, I'm going to cut that out of the video. Now, my favorite by far is I use this arm, which I mount on my little platform in the back. And I position it about this level right here. And this is what I attach to it. It is a small rig, regular articulating arm, but on top it has a pair of the ball socket bendy arms. And if you can imagine this being positioned over my specimen, it allows me to individually position lights above, like so. And this is a game changer because it allows you to independently change the position, which changes the intensity of your light, inverse square law and all that. It allows you to independently angle these lights from above for the effect you're looking for. When I said I thought that these flashes were going to revolutionize studio macro, I had no idea how flexible they were going to be, because just with one clamp like this, I can have two lights up here, I can have a light on a bendy arm down here, a light on the other side, and I can completely surround my subject with light, and I can adjust the powers independently so that I can get as much depth and three-dimensionality as I want. You can really, really create this appearance of massive size. That's one of the reasons you use multiple flashes, is to create gradients, so that on something as small as a weevil, you can have the light dropping off as you get further back on the weevil. And the human brain looks at that and thinks, gosh, that weevil must be the size of a whale. And you can only do that if you can control the lighting differentially, if you can have different intensities coming from different directions. And I have never found anything that is close to this amount of flexibility. The reason I've ordered a couple more flashes is I discovered that these are perfect to use as hair lights by positioning the flash in front of the subject, or from our perspective, down behind the subject, as you see here, and just firing a real low power flash right across the back of the subject. It gives the most wonderful definition, and you couldn't used to do that. Well, I guess you could, but you'd have so many flashes and diffusers in the space that it would just get impossible to juggle. Another thing I love about having these so tiny is I don't have to have a big fancy way to attach diffusers. I came across a piece of plastic. I don't know what it was from. So I think it was from a scanner that I was taking apart. Something like this, which would be perfect diffusion. It's even got a texture on it. Something like this could be mounted on a bendy arm like this that's actually attached to the clamp. It's that, I might as well show you. I've been using it for this. So I could attach my diffuser, a second diffuser, of course, like so, right in front of my flash. And if you tried to do this with regular sized flashes, by the time you had 3 of them on your rig, you wouldn't be able to see anything, and one flash would be blocking the light from another. This just brings the light under your control and allows you to change directions and intensities in a way that you just dreamed of before. It was pure guesswork. Say you want more light from the right side. In the past, you had to crank up the power on the right-sided light. And that's fine, except all the light is coming from one xenon flash tube. So your specularity will get worse. From the bug's perspective, it will just be a brighter spot source of light. But what if we could increase the amount of light or the intensity of the light without increasing the specularity? Instead of having one more powerful light coming from the right, how about if you had 2 separated lights coming from the right? Now you get more light, you get the light intensity you need without magnifying the specularity. You're still spreading out the origin. What's important is that your specimen sees as large a source of light as possible. And you can do that with these. We couldn't do that before, except with multiple layers of diffusion. So I'm completely sold. This reminds me of the first time I tried the R1C1, which is Nikon's very expensive $1,000 version of this. And it's fantastic. I had a chance to play with one when I was with my friend Bud a couple of weeks ago. He's got the R1C1 as well. But I'm willing to bet he'll never use it again when he gets a set of these, because these are just painless. And setting them up, if you've ever struggled with a menu on a flash to figure out exactly what to press, this is just beyond simple. Just follow the directions in the book. You don't have to hold your tongue in a special way and hold 4 buttons down for 3 seconds and then release just one of them to get it to work. When I get the other 2, I am going to have one of them up here and one of them down here as a stereo backlight. This gradient that this gives is nice, but sometimes I don't want a gradient. Sometimes I want a seamless background. 2 of these will do that. So for the price of, what can you buy for $100 these days? For a loaf of bread, you can get a Godox MF-12 from Pergear. They're the people to get it from. I'll put links in the show notes. I'm going to write an article about this. This may be the one thing that gets a more raving review than the PB6 bellows, which until today was my favorite thing to talk about. So I normally try not to get this excited about things because I don't want to seem hyperbolic. But the fact is, these are something else. They really are an affordable, practical, easy to use, reliable, simple flash. They're kind of everything a macro photographer wants in a flash without having to worry about all the stuff that can go wrong with the fancier flashes that do a lot of stuff that we don't need, like TTL. They're just a good, reliable flash. I didn't notice any variability in the light intensity, but I shoot at a very long interval, so I was giving them plenty of time to equilibrate. I didn't have any problems using them in the field, as you'll see. I have yet to find anything about them that is a deal breaker in the negative direction. The 3 things that bothered me: the durability of the clip, which is not even a real problem. It hasn't become a problem yet. It's just, it seems to be a weak link, and it might not be. The second thing is the inboard battery, which is about, I should compare it to one of those implantable defibrillators. I mean, I wouldn't turn one of them down because it had an implantable battery. That's not one you'd want to replace on your own. So I can categorically recommend these for anybody who does any macro. They're going to be a permanent fixture on my new macro rig. I do want to mention to you a rather important discovery. This is the new macro focusing rail from Fittest, who took over from Nisi in producing this rail. You'll remember this is a rail that I raved about in the Mark I version. The Mark II version is better, and I'm going to be reviewing these next week. This is two of them, by the way. They don't come like this. I have mounted one on top of the other for something I'm doing here. But that is something that you're going to want to check out. If you're still using a manual rail, this is a rail that you'll want to look at, because all the little niggly things about the first version of this from Nisi, they've been fixed. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your support, and I hope this was helpful. Go buy some MF-12s. You won't be sorry. Don't forget the trigger. You need a trigger. I'll put links in the show notes. And if you want to look at an article and see all of my test pictures, go over to my website. The article will be linked in the show notes, and you'll see all the pictures over there. Take care, be safe, and I'll see you again in a few days. Hasta la vista, baby. Whatever that means. Look at the view.